Are you considering investing in short-term rental property because it can make a lot more money? Well, I've got 9 reasons for why it just might not be worth it. Coming up. What's up, fam? In today's video, I talk about the negatives of investing in and operating short-term rental properties. I actually made this video back in May, but I wanted to relist it now because I think it's a very important public service announcement. So put your phones away, grab your popcorn, smash that like button, and then get comfortable because this is a long video. Here are my top 9 negatives of short-term rental investing. All right, Fred, roll that clip. So number 9 is it's just a lot more work to do and to manage. First of all, you've got to furnish the place, which includes a lot of things that you wouldn't normally think of right off the bat, like soap for hand washing and for the dishwasher, dishwashing sponges, kitchen utensils, hangers in the closets. So the list goes on, and there's definitely checklists out on the internet that you can use to make sure you have everything. But the point is that there's a lot of things that you'll have to take care of. You've also got to create accounts and manage the bills for all of your utility services, for internet, and these are all things that your tenant would normally take care of if they were living there. And once you've done that and set up your Airbnb, you've got to communicate with your guests frequently. The more frequent, straightforward your communication is, the better the results are. You'll have to clean the property yourself after every guest or hire cleaners and oversee those turnovers. And you've got to manage the inventory for all the supplies that you need and that the guests will expect, like toiletries, paper towels, toilet paper, maybe if you provide this coffee and laundry detergent, cooking oil, spices. And then there's the matter of revenue management, which is really, really important when it comes to maximizing your earnings. Hotels and airline companies invest millions of dollars into this area and hired scores of data scientists to analyze this for them. So do not take this lightly. It's very important to constantly tweak and update your pricing to be successful on Airbnb. And lastly, the financial accounting with short-term rentals is much more complicated and messy than a traditional rental. So number 8 is that the management fees are higher. And this goes hand in hand with the fact that it's more work to manage. If you don't want the added work and stress of handling all those things that I just mentioned before, then you've got to hire somebody to do some or all of it for you. And as you can imagine, the cost is going to reflect this. So in a traditional rental, typically the management fee on an ongoing monthly basis is 10% of net revenue. But with short-term rentals, while it's not a very established industry yet, and also the responsibilities that a property management company will handle can vary quite a bit, I'd say the standard rate seems to be about 20 to 30% of net revenue. There are some companies and software services out there that can help you with specific tasks, automating your guest communications, automating your pricing strategies. So there are solutions that you could find that are cost effective, but they're still going to cost something. Number 7 is bad guests. Now, obviously you can get bad tenants. It's not unheard of, but the chances of getting a bad guest are just so much higher. First of all, you have so many more guests coming to stay at your property in the same amount of time that you would have just one tenant. And then secondly, because of the sheer number that are coming to stay, it's much easier to screen your potential tenants than it is to vet every single guest who's going to be staying at your rental. Now, really, really bad guests are not very common in our experience, but they do show up in great numbers on the very mild end of the spectrum. Ever since the beginning, actually, I remember our very first guest was a lovely older immigrant couple, and the wife was extremely friendly and talkative. And when they left, they took with them our full-sized shampoo bottles from both bathrooms. We quickly learned not to use those anymore. In those early days, I was surprised by a lot of things that people would steal. The shampoos, paper towels, toilet papers, actual bath towels, and bed sheets, even a Chromecast dongle. Nowadays, nothing really surprises me at all anymore. Also pretty common is guests lying about the number of people in their party, which is not a big deal, but it still is a financial cost because for us, we charge for additional guests over a certain number. And there's a reason for this. There's also a reason why hosts might have a maximum number of guests allowed. Another thing is also not mentioning pets when pets are either not allowed in our listings or are allowed with an additional fee. These are certainly not the worst transgressions possible, but I mean, it just adds insurance risk. And it also adds to the wear and tear and adds to the cleaning cost. And then at the extreme end of the spectrum, you'll have very bad guests who just destroy everything, have no regard for anything, perform illegal activities, and so forth. You could Google the nightmare stories from Airbnb hosts who've had tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage and who've had ongoing court cases for months or years even. By comparison, our experiences are quite minor. Still, we've had a handful of guests who've caused significant enough damage that we've had to file claims with Airbnb. So my number 6 is higher risk and higher insurance costs. Of course, with the number of guests coming through your property and the potential for at least some of them to be bad guests, your insurance premiums are going to reflect this higher risk. Our insurance costs for the short-term rentals are about 75 to 100% higher premiums than the traditional rentals. And for our condo in Chicago, there was actually a large increase in the cost of the master policy for the HOA, and when we paid the difference, the actual insurance cost in total was about 3 times what it would have been for just a normal landlord policy. Now, of course, insurance varies widely, so it's important to try to compare apples to apples in terms of your coverage. If you feel like supplementing what you have, you can look at insurance products built specifically for short-term rentals that cover you by the rental, but we've never used any of those. We've always solely relied on the Airbnb host guarantee, which covers hosts for up to $1 million in damages. Satisfaction with this program has been pretty inconsistent, so you may not want to rely solely on it. But for us, we've been pretty happy. I feel like we're pretty reasonable, we're not too demanding, and we let a lot of small things slide. So we only have reported issues a handful of times for more serious stuff, and Airbnb pretty much has always taken care of us. So my number 5 is the dependence on third-party platforms. Now, this has been an issue that's popped up from time to time, but it's really been in the spotlight lately with this pandemic coming around and a lot of hosts complaining about how Airbnb has treated them during this time. Now, while we have had some minor issues with Airbnb, occasionally with disagreements and arbitration, a lot of times with like technical glitches with the software, for the most part, we're very happy with Airbnb and we found it to be better than any other alternatives out there. Now, that said, they do take a sizable fee from what our guests pay in total. They basically have final say in some tricky situations, and they can unilaterally make decisions that could hurt hosts like they did with the pandemic. The thing is that while we may not like it, we really don't have any suitable alternatives. The rest of the large platforms like Booking.com, Vrbo, HomeAway, etc., they're all essentially the same. Now, you could go with a more boutique style, smaller third-party platform that maybe is a bit more host friendly and suits your needs. However, your exposure is going to be much less, and therefore your business will be more limited. And of course, the last option you have is just to go at it independently of any third-party platform. But that's really not going to be possible for most people. At number 4, I have natural disasters and pandemics. This COVID-19 crisis is quite unprecedented in just the magnitude and way it's shut down all kinds of travel. But it's not actually the first time that we've experienced this type of problem. In fact, being on the Florida coast, we go through this almost every single year, with hurricane season bringing about mandatory evacuations of low-lying areas. In addition to last-minute cancellations from this, we've also had situations where neighborhoods where our properties are at just completely flood and are inaccessible. So even if a guest needed to stay at that property, they wouldn't be able to. The fact of the matter is, a guest should expect to be able to come and go from their temporary accommodation, but a tenant signs up to take on this risk with you. So number 3 on my list is lost revenue from maintenance and repairs. Kind of like with the natural disasters, when you have maintenance issues and repair work needs to be done, that can often mean lost revenue. Sometimes that's because you have to keep a unit vacant to complete a major repair, while other times it's just a small refund to a guest for the inconvenience of a minor issue. But either way, this is a double whammy because of the lost revenue in addition to the cost of the repair itself. On the other hand, if these issues occur during a long-term lease, I find that the tenants are usually very grateful to have the problems addressed so quickly, or they're just excited to get a brand new roof or a toilet or a new appliance or whatever the case may be. But if an AC stops working during a short-term stay, even if your repairman gets there first thing the next morning, you're almost certainly going to be refunding that guest for at least one night minimum. Same exact situation with drastically different results. A short-term guest who's frustrated and unhappy, or a long-term tenant who's excited and grateful. So my number 2 con of short-term rental investing is city regulations. Kind of like the reliance on third-party platforms, this one is about our dependence on favorable city regulations and really our lack of control over them. In some cases, municipal ordinances effect an outright ban on short-term rentals in certain areas, but short of that, some cities still require hosts to live in their property full-time, or they'll limit the number of days a property can be rented out short-term. Or another common restriction is to limit the number of licenses available in a particular block or neighborhood for short-term rentals. The point is, whether it's right or wrong, there are many different ways that a city might look to protect its residents from the negative impacts of short-term rentals. But what is most important is to be aware of these rules and regulations, and also be able to keep a pulse on the city, the way the community is feeling, and the way the city officials may be leaning. The markets that we're in with short-term rentals, we feel are as safe as can be because those cities were proactive in working with Airbnb to come up with win-win-win solutions for their residents and for the city itself and Airbnb hosts. And this is not fail-proof. The winds could change at any moment, but at least we're trying to be ready for that change. And now my number 1 con of short-term rental investing is unrealistic expectations. This is really my number 1 source of stress, and I try very hard to be transparent and forthcoming with our guests so that we can establish appropriate expectations. Our short-term rentals are all in very good locations and they're all in decent to good condition, but they're not luxurious by any means. And so every once in a while, guests will come and they will expect something that we just cannot provide. Sometimes it's just out of our control and it's something that is nobody's fault really. Like they thought the street would be prettier, the neighborhood would be quieter, or the home would be newer. While other times it might be something that they just didn't read carefully in the listing. Like we have certain shared spaces and they were expecting everything to be private, or a laundry room that is outside of the main house. Some of our properties don't have any dedicated off-street parking. None of our properties have cable television. So we try to be very clear in the listings, but not every guest reads everything before booking. However, in every instance, a traditional tenant would not have these same issues. I like to say that a traditional tenant is always on your side, at least when you've done proper screening and you have a good quality property. They like your home and they have chosen to live there. So you both are wanting to see the property maintained in good condition. They'll almost always have seen your property first, so there really shouldn't be any surprises on at least a surface level. And if everything goes well, they'll even fall in love with their home and they'll take care of it and be proud of it. Now I've got to say, by and large, Airbnb guests are good guests and we don't have any major issues with the majority of them. But it's this small percentage that causes the majority of headaches. So those are my negatives of short-term rental investing. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully I haven't scared anyone away, and if you need a reminder of why you might want to do short-term rental investing, check out my video on the pros of Airbnb rentals. So if you enjoyed that video, please take a second to like and comment down below, and also consider subscribing and smashing that notification bell so that you'll see me next time.